What are you planning, Nami? What's your goal? Time skip. Me, Luffy, and Sanji, and Yasuku. We're just lounging up on the ship, still waiting until we make it to our destination. Luffy was sitting on the pole that was in the front of the ship, yawning. And me, Sanji, and Yasuku were sitting on the floor. We sat there in silence for a moment until Luffy shouted out, "This weather's perfect!" As he said that, he slid down the pole to the ship side and ran to the back of the ship to go look out. He spoke up and said, presumably to us, "So which way's the Grand Line? Is it that way?" As he said that, he ran to the other side of the ship. "Or maybe this way." "That way? Over here? Maybe there? Where we're gonna be? I wanna see this place! I wanna see! As Luffy was running around, Sanji got annoyed and told him off. "You need to sit." "Jeez, you bug me." Luffy bent down and looked between his legs to presumably look at all of us from upside down. Luffy said, "Oh, sorry. I'm just so excited that we have a cook on board now. Now we just need Nami. And then nothing will stand between us in the Grand Line." As Luffy said that, you actually thought about it for a moment. So we're actually going to the Grand Line. I haven't been there in years. I just have to hope and pray we don't run into my hometown. Luffy walked into the front of the ship and sat down on the dock. "So, are we getting closer where Nami is? You know, the island?" As he said that, Yasuku slapped his knee and said, "You're way too naive and way too young. Don't you get it? You know, every second that passes, we're getting closer to the infamous Arlong?" "Arlong? I've heard that name before, but I don't quite remember." Yasuku spoke up. Nami couldn't stop on looking at Arlong's picture when she saw it. And it wasn't a normal kind of stare. There was something different the way she was staring at it. Something focused. As he said that, his grip tightened on his knees. He spoke up. "I'm telling you, she's planning to take down Arlong and collect his bounty. For all we know, we could be just sitting here and she's already made it to his compound." As he said that, Luffy let out a big yawn and said, "That's nice. Let's eat." "Sounds good," Sanji said. You spoke up. "I'm actually a little hungry too." As we all said that, Yasuku shouted in surprise, "Don't tell me you guys are so clueless that you haven't heard of the infamous Arlong!" He shouted at us. Sanji spoke up in reply, "No. So who is he?" Luffy said in reply, "Yeah." You spoke up as well. I have to agree with them. Yasuku had a very shocked look on his face. He tilted his hand down and blew a whistle. Don't know where he got the whistle from, but you're not gonna question it. "Listen up, guys. For your education on the infamous shark, Arlong. Arlong is a fish man that will destroy anything in his path, up and down in the Grand Line." Sanji, me, and Luffy replied with, "Fishman? That's cool. I never met one of those before." Surprising to hear. I heard that the women on Fishman Island are just beautiful. As he said that, Luffy pulled out a notebook and started drawing something. He said while he was drawing, "Fishman sounds weird. Do they look like this?" As he said that, he showed us the picture he was drawing. A very crappy one at that. But nonetheless, it was funny. Me and Sanji started laughing at the picture he drew. "Can't you focus for 1 minute, please?" Yasuku shouted. As he said that, he sat down on one of the side benches from the ship. He had our attentions when he said, "Alright, I'll start from the very beginning. The reason behind why they call the Grand Line a pirate's graveyard is because Arlong and the 2 other powers that rule over it. The first of the powers are the 7 warlords of the sea." "7 warlords?" Luffy asked in confusion. "The 7 warlords are the ones that are authorized by the government," Yasuku said. Sanji replied with, "Seriously? Why would any pirate of the sea need any government approval?" You thought to yourself, even though I lived in the Grand Line, I've never heard of the 7 warlords. Yasuku spoke up. "For protection, the government looks the other way for the cut of their treasure, and they're allowed to exist. But of course to other pirates they're just government dogs. They didn't get where they are with just being weak. These guys are powerful. The man that defeated Zoro was one of these. The man who defeated Zoro was one of these warlords. His name is Hawkeye Mihawk." As Yasuko said that, Luffy pricked up and had a very weird expression on his face and started moving his legs around. Luffy responded in surprise, "That's so cool! I can't wait to meet all 70 of these guys! They sound awesome!" As Luffy was making his weird face and clattering his feet, me and Sanji were weirdly looking at him. Another one you should know about is Jinbei, captain of the fishmen. He's dangerous like no one knows. He causes destruction and mayhem just like Arlong. As Yasuku said that, Luffy pulled out another ridiculous picture he drew and said, "Is this closer?" Me and Sanji looked back at him in a confused look. That just looks like your last picture but standing up. It was funny the first time. Yasuku spoke up. Arlong has already taken to over 20 towns since coming to the East Blue. And Yasuku started rambling on of how Arlong is big and vicious and how we should be afraid of him. And you zoned out for the rest of what he had to say. Until Sanji spoke up. Why do you think she went to this guy all by herself? I told you already. She wants to collect the bounty on his head. She went off topic and said, "Oh, could you imagine? I could give anything to see that." As he said that, Luffy turned around another picture and said, "She looked like this." It was the same picture from before, but he just drew eyelashes and hair on the thing and put Nami's name on. As he was showing us the picture, Sanji snapped back to Luffy and shouted at him, "Tear that up!" Yasuku shouted back at us, "Have either of you morons listened to a word I said?" Luffy said and replied, "Yes, you're badass fishman. Some guy stronger than the other guy. We get it." Yasuku clenched his fist at that. "No, you don't get it," he said in a very anxious voice. "You never had to face a fishman." Luffy replied with, "Yeah, we'll face one when we get there. Don't worry about it." As he said that, Sanji stood up from where he was sitting and spoke up. "Well, I guess I'll get lunch started." Luffy replied with, "About time! Let's eat!" As he said that, Yasuku looked up in surprise and said, "What? Food?" I looked back at Sanji and he was rolling up his sleeves and said with delight, "What are you guys in the mood for?" As Yasuku and Luffy were shouting out what they wanted. He looked back at Sanji and grinned for a second. You don't know why, but he just did. And after they said what they wanted, Sanji looked back at me and said, "What would you like, my darling listener?" He thought for a second and replied with, "Surprise me. Leave it to me." As Sanji said that, he walked into the back, presumably where the kitchen was. Luffy perked up and said, "Man, having the cook is the best." "It sure is," Yasuku said and replied. You thought to yourself, "It is really nice. But it's not nice to have feelings as well." Ugh, what are you gonna do?